Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. I'm going to show you the most effective way to debate atheists or agnostics or people who deny God. And of course, I love using intelligent design as an argument, and I love challenging the atheists or the agnostics to disprove my arguments. And of course, I give them signs through the creation, and I get atheists to try and challenge that notion, because as you know, atheists like to say things like it was nature that was responsible for creating all the complex enzymes and creation within our universe. And when we put that challenge towards the atheists or agnostics, you see them fall apart. So let's listen to the arguments on both sides. You be the judge and see for yourself how our arguments always stay up and they can't get refuted. And it always usually ends up with the same typical ending, and you'll see it now for yourself. So let me narrate exactly what I said and see what the deniers of God say. I basically said, I'm still not convinced brainless Mother Nature created all the complex functions, such as brains, eyes, kidneys, hearts. But it's okay, you can keep talking about emotional, world evil matters and disasters, because of course the atheists or the agnostics were being emotional. Oh, if there's a God, how come there's pain and suffering? But, let's not let them divert from the central issue. Let's get them to discuss this fundamental issue, this fundamental point that creation itself is so magnificent and so powerful that it proves the existence of God through design. Basically, Mathew said in response, he said, who said Mother Nature is brainless? On the contrary, it is full of rich of intelligence. And he says, I don't swing that way, but thanks for the compliment. So I basically said to him, really? Mother Nature is full of intelligence, yet it never went to school or had a PhD? Yet it is able to create all life matters. Where did it obtain this sort of intelligence from? The atheist or the agnostic said, what are you talking about? He says, of course nature is full of intelligence. He says, take a look around. And my response to him was, yes, I agree, but it never went to school. Where did it get all the intelligence to create complex body parts like your kidneys, your heart, your human functions, your eyes, and so forth? Mathew then said, it's pretty hard to discuss with someone uneducated. So notice how the deniers are now appealing to your education. Notice how they're trying to cut you down and use that against you. This is what we call trying to demean someone, trying to discredit them, because you're just trying to now put the ignorance card on them. Now, instead of dealing with the arguments, they like to deal with red herrings, and they like to deal with these emotional arguments and character assassination, and they like to use ad hominems, to attack the person instead of attacking the argument. So then he says, go pick up a primer of evolutionary biology, cellular meiosis and mitosis. He goes on, he says, so you at least know what you are debating, or does God not know what level of understanding? So again, he's not dealing with the argument, and it's clear. I said, and in my response, I said to him, it's pretty hard to discuss the obvious. You really think that Mother Nature does not need to go to school to create the most advanced complex elements? You really believe this? Super intelligence is instinct, is it? He replied back by saying, did the cells that comprise the tissue of your body go to school to know how to differentiate and adapt to form different organs with vastly different functions? No, he argues. The intelligence is innate. Okay, so listen to his argument. He's saying basically that the intelligence is just natural. It's within that Mother Nature. And I said to him in response, so super intelligence is instinct? So super intelligence just happened. No need to go to school, because this is just laughable, that it's just naturally embedded. He responds back by saying, how do you manage to still spell intelligence? And look, notice he's again going on to, he's trying to have a problem with my spelling, right? He's again using ad hominems, red herrings. Instead of attacking the argument, he's trying to attack me personally because of some spelling errors. I then said to him, so you still think you don't need to go to school to obtain super intelligence? So again, I'm trying to refer him to the argument, to deal with the argument and stop dealing with me. He says, of course you don't. You are confusing knowledge with intelligence. So now he's saying that we're confusing knowledge with intelligence. And my response to him was, no one is confusing anything. These super intelligent enzymes had super intelligence without inquiring any need for external knowledge. It just miraculously was inbuilt and innate, as you've expressed. He replied back by saying, yes, that's how life works. There is no need for a magical policeman at any stage. My response to him is, no, bro. Life doesn't work that way. Our human experiences tell us super duper intelligence must be acquired. You don't just wake up one day and become Einstein. To claim that it's innate, that these enzymes just simply educated themselves and created complex components, is as ridiculous as asserting that a 15-year-old kid that never went to school created a 747 jumbo jet aeroplane. Enzymes in nature were not always intelligent. They were one stage even non-living matter. Over millions of years, they apparently educated themselves without going to school and created things far complex than today's amazing machinery created by man. So sorry, but I can't believe your innate inquired intelligence unless that innate was taught and programmed to those enzymes by a higher teacher, which we call higher intelligence or God. Mathew wrote back and said, do you see any kind of teacher like that anywhere? He says, even Einstein himself was just a product of DNA and cellular information. If someone messed with his brain or hit him in the head with a hammer, he would have never become anything. He was a fraudster and a plagiarist, anything but that's not the point. My response to him is, do you see any kind of teacher like that anywhere? Even Einstein himself, just a product of DNA and cellular information. This is what he basically said. Well, my response to him is, actually Einstein himself, although his body was the product of these enzymes, those enzymes didn't teach him maths or physics. He went and learnt it himself. Math, please spare me the nonsense. Today's super intelligent human beings go to school for years and years to learn about human anatomy. And to study years and years, these huge enzymes, and even then they are having trouble to create human anatomy. It takes years and years of research, yet to claim that these enzymes, millions and millions of years ago, just had inbuilt intelligence, yet created the most advanced things, is just nothing but a wild, irrational imagination. If you wish to believe in such magical things, then go for it. Mathew then replied back and said, so believing in scientific facts is nonsense, but believing in that the sun is in a muddy puddle, that rocks can talk. Notice he's now going off topic. He's trying to attack the internal contradictions as he claims in the Quran. And this is besides the point. We are talking about the existence of God, the existence of intelligent design. Notice every time he gets cornered, he shifts the goalpost and he wants to move away to other topics. So I said to him, Mathew, you believe in scientific magic that explains that enzymes magically created your eyes, kidneys, brains without a single day in school. And I'm constantly and he constantly speaks about contradictions, and in other passages he spoke about headings. But like I said, he fails numerous times to answer rational questions. He's basically like those typical atheists with red herrings. He's feeling pretty uncomfortable, and he continuously diverts the topic to take the focus elsewhere. And Allah actually speaks about this. He says, their sins have blinded their hearts. Verses 8 says, we have placed chains on their necks, and these have reached their chins, so that their heads raised aloft. In Quran 36:9 it says, and we have set a bar before them and a bar behind them, and we have covered them up. In Quran 2:7 it says, Allah has set a seal upon their hearts and upon their hearing, and a vision or over them, and He's veiled them, and for them is a great punishment. So as you can see, not dealing with the arguments, they are blinded because Allah has set a seal upon their hearts, because they are just basically ignoring facts. And this is a nature of them, and it's quite sad. Of course, he came back and he said, my point is clear. This is Mathew speaking. He says, we observe patterns, activity, intelligence in even the smallest, most abstract forms of life. He says, where is this God guiding it all? And here's my response. My response is as follows. I said, your point isn't clear at all. You avoided answering the questions. These enzymes, as I showed, keep getting things right. Yet they did not go to school to learn these traits. They had it inbuilt, as you said. How did they have this information inbuilt, as you suggest? We gave you human experiences that programs can only get inbuilt by external knowledge and force. It just doesn't happen by mere chance and randomness. I gave you the example of our human experiences, that we are intelligent and we can be just as super intelligent, yet we are unable to compete with nature that never had a day in school. Yet this nature can create things far more complex than the most advanced human beings on the planet. How exactly have you explained this? All you spoke about is beheadings, child marriages, red herrings, when you could not lift your head up. Instead, you went to the extent to come here and act like a denier and an atheist. And later he even tried to say he's not an atheist. He was appealing to Buddhism and things like that. So it's just like he's losing his mind under the pressure cooker. Mathew then responds back and says, I'll ignore all the bullshit and keep it stupid simple. So he's now again using some foul insults. He's insulting us now. So, and the best he has is to post a link, which shows that the process of cells dividing to form a human body. So he's showing how cells divide to form body parts. Again, he's not even addressing my argument. And my response to him is, there you go, how silly. And my response to him is that he posts a video showing cells creating body parts. But I said to him, who created those cells to do what they do? It was nature, as you would say. So my question is nature that intelligent? Well, the answer is yes, according to you. If the answer is yes, then please, if it doesn't require higher power, then go ahead, replicate and be like Mother Nature. If indeed it doesn't require high intelligence like a god, then be God, create your own cells, then allow these cells to engineer these human body parts. Can you show us a practical example of this? Notice, I'm conflating you to challenge that very nature that you posted, creating these body parts. By doing so, I'm proving that there is a hidden power far greater than any human capability. So notice I've challenged him now. I've challenged him to now compete with those amazing, enzymes that could create these body parts. Mathew then replied back and said, but we already can create things from DNA and cellular information. And he posts a picture of make your own meat where, they get these stem cells and they basically create their own pieces of meat and so forth. This is still under study, but here is a response. My response to him is, first of all, create it from scratch, not already existing machinery software. Even synthetic cells are created using already existing proteins, abstracts from yeast. In other words, today's scientists, when constructing synthetic life, they borrow the machinery software from already existing enzymes. And notice, folks, here is the dilemma. These things like creating synthetic life didn't just happen in a lab by themselves. It took scientists, researchers after research, adding right conditions, manipulating and borrowing machinery enzymes from other sources, then trying to get it work elsewhere. So notice this is hardly creating, it's more borrowing an already existing machinery enzymes. Did you notice what Mathew did? He actually published an article speaking about how meat is created. But did you notice what the article said? The article says that they were borrowing muscle stem cells from already existing machinery software. This is the whole point. They can't engineer their own stem cells. They always borrow already existing materials like DNA and so forth, then incubate them somewhere else. That's hardly creation. Of course, Mathew then said, and humans can have sex, the sperm meets the ovum, cells replicate, and human is born. Where is the need of external creator in that process? I mean, this is the most ridiculous claim. Humans have sex and create things. Well, humans actually are the process of how things are regenerated. Humans themselves did not create the ovum, the cells, the sperm, for starters. They didn't create these things. These things were already embedded and programmed, and the humans only intervened in regenerating that creation through already existing programs. So, I mean, for him to say, how is God even necessary, is unbelievable. Explaining the mechanism does not deduce from the creator. I mean, this is unbelievable. So again, notice he's ignoring my challenge. My challenge is as follows. This is the whole point. I want you now to go to your lab, create your own amino acids and proteins, and engineer and create a particular creature we have never seen before. This is a challenge we put forward. If Mother Nature can create billions of different species, then I'm sure you can do the same. Don't run away and divert the topic. Meet this challenge. I bet he will do what all other typical atheists do. I speak to will do. They will say, for example, one day we'll achieve it. And watch, he'll do that in the very end. And the prophecy that I made was actually true. You'll see at the end, he actually did make that testification. So then Mathew replies back by saying, but your argument is that God creates, not Mother Nature, unless you're equating them as one and the same. Actually, I'm not equating it. It is atheists and agnostics who actually equate God with nature. See, we believers, we say God did it. You call your God Mother Nature. You say Mother Nature did it, right? But like I said, we are now getting you to try and compete with brainless Mother Nature. That never went to school, right? It is intelligent. So if Mother Nature can do it, then you are the product of Mother Nature, then you should be able to do it too. And of course, he can't meet that challenge because we're proving by asking the atheists to challenge this, we're asking him to see, and we're trying to basically humble him to show him that there is a greater power than both nature and himself. There is a greater power behind it. My response back to Mathew was, will you meet the challenge or will you tell me what all other typical atheists say we will create this creature using those raw early materials in the future. Mathew wrote back by saying, we can already clone full mammals. The truth is we probably have the technology to clone humans in a very short space of time, but the public isn't allowed to know the extent of it. So if we can do that from a single strand of hair, how is that so different? My response to him. So he brought the argument of cloning. Okay, so here is a response. Mathew, when cloning is done, all one does is replicate and borrow already existing materials, such as proteins and DNA and machinery from elsewhere, and molecules, then incubating it somewhere else. Now I ask you, that isn't creation. That is copying, basically. Now I ask you to stop trolling around and meet the challenge I requested. See, all you can do is play around with already existing molecules, and all they can do is copy and make similar creations. I ask for you to use these raw early elements, the same early elements that gave birth to life forms, and create from scratch some creature we have never seen before. Don't go ahead and try and make another human being or another piece of me. I mean, all you're doing is copying and using already existing molecules. In fact, do it in your lab. Create something that we've never seen before. Do it in your lab. Engineer its features, and let's see this thing simply grow. But here is the bottom line. Notice, even if you achieved it, it still doesn't prove your position. Why? Because it actually required external intelligence to do these things. Yet we are told that in the beginning of how the earliest life forms formed, no such thing was required, it just simply happens. Yet these atheists or agnostics cannot replicate and even show how simple enzymes did this all by itself, starting from scratch. It's never actually happened in a practical example. And even Miller's experiment shows that, Miller's experiment shows that they created, I think it was left-hand amino acids, which were actually destructive, and they actually just created the building blocks for life. It wasn't actually life itself that generated this new creature, living, breathing, talking, walking. They were only discussing the building blocks, and that's the best that they could do, building blocks. Mathew then said, and notice I prophesied this challenge at the beginning. Remember I said that when he's devastated and he's on the ropes and he can't prove his position, this is what they'll always say. And he confirmed that Mathew wrote and said, just because we can't do it, it means God must have done it. How does that work? So now he's finally conceded that he can't compete with brainless Mother Nature, which actually proves that there is a higher God behind even human beings and nature itself. I basically said to Mathew, I'm not pointing to God at this moment. For me, God or a superpower high intelligence is the best explanation. It may not be for you. I'm not forcing you to accept it. Everyone is judged by their own decisions. I'm merely expressing that if this Mother Nature has these miraculous powers, our human intelligence is having great difficulty in competing with, even though we are far more technologically advanced. Yet we are still far from even attempting to compete with it. I say there is a greater obvious power behind all our human capabilities. This force is greater than nature and greater than us. It is so great we can't even compete with it. We can't even compete with his creation, let alone competing with God. I find it mind-boggling that we can sit here and say nature just randomly created things without going to school. It's just something natural. This is what they say. The fact is, it's not natural, because if it was, then we would do it without the blink of an eye. There is a higher power, and the fact we can't compete is just adding more salt to the wound and continuously affirming the truth. In fact, I'm ready to leave creationism until they can play God. The fact is, so far they are far from it. Thus, I stick with the best explanation. Mathew then writes back and says, but we are products of nature. You are right that we can't compete with it, but that points to the intelligence inherent in nature rather than anything else. So my response to him is, Mathew, if this intelligence is inherent in nature, we too are part of nature, yet we are unable to do what nature does. For this reason, I say that there is a bigger force behind nature, and it's not nature alone. Mathew then basically said is just because we can't do what nature does, doesn't mean we need a God behind nature. My response to him is, for you it may mean it doesn't mean there is a higher being, but from a rational perspective, for me personally, if I know that we as human reflection of that nature in its most advanced state cannot, then I concede to there being a higher power. And like I said, until today, I have never seen an atheist or an agnostic or a God denier to give me a single counter-argument to my argument. I stick by it because it is unchallenged. Mathew says, who says that we are a reflection of nature in its most advanced state? He then says, I wouldn't even object to you believing in a higher power, but who says that it is God of the Quran? My response to him is, Mathew, Darwinian evolutionists tell us that the human race is the most overall advanced race in nature. And to answer his question about I wouldn't even object to believing in a higher power, but who says that it is God of the Quran? So again, he's diverting the subject when he couldn't meet the challenge. He's now saying, well, if there is a God and if it is true, then which one is it? And my response to him is, there is no point. I'm not here to convince you that it is Allah. That is besides the point. Nor am I here to convince you it's Jesus or Yahweh. I'm here to defend creationism. Whatever that God may be is irrelevant. And then he went on to say, if God is separate from creation, he must have decided to create it. Why do that in the first place and cause such unnecessary trouble? And now he's literally left the debate challenge. He's now going into other external questions regarding why does God do this and why does God do that. So as you can see, the atheist or the agnostic or the God denier has literally conceded to my argument that there is a higher power behind human beings and nature, a higher power that can create. The very fact that human beings cannot even create with Mother Nature proves there is a higher being above even Mother Nature itself. So now, since he's gone off topic, I'll just address it to finish off the video. He's basically saying is why does God need to, unnecessarily create trouble on the earth? And my argument to him is this world is an abode of test. It's an abode of Satan. It's a home of Satan. It's a place of punishment, a place where all foul pain, suffering is supposed to exist. These are the trials of our earthly abode. We believe that God puts us through these pressure tests in order to see who is triumphant upon it all. This may explain why such catastrophes, things are necessary on our planet. And then Mathew writes back and says, it's the same circular reasoning though. He said, if God is perfect, why would he willingly create an imperfect world? He then goes on to say, why create things to test them and not just make it perfect to start with? And my final response to him is, I really can't answer a subjective matter. The only thing I can say is that That's the way God operates. It's usually how our daily material world even operates. Probably a lot more unfair. For example, we go to school while we are young, and upon those grades we are usually judged for the rest of our lives. The way I look at it, nothing is really free. We are created to work for things we want. To be honest, if God is promising me with eternal reward, then I would like to prove to Him I have earned it. I wouldn't expect to sit back with free handouts. If God has given me all these wonderful blessings, I would want to repay Him back with gratitude and worship. Of course, we can never repay back all the countless favors. So basically, that's it. That was the end of the discussion. The challenge wasn't met. We put forward the arguments, and the arguments still stand. Yes, God is the best explanation, for He is the creator, and we human beings cannot compete. We cannot compete, and every time we try, we keep failing. And when the atheist says, oh, we'll do it in the future, that is just a smokescreen. That is diverting the challenge. In fact, we are at our most advanced state, yet we can't even compete with brainless Mother Nature. So, and again, even if they do achieve it, it still requires intelligence to be able to assemble and create things, would still prove a creator. And so the argument stands. The atheists continuously fail on the arguments from this point of fact. And of course, their whole argument of abiogenesis, how, random mutations happened in this primordial soup, and, we just had creation that just took place without divine guidance. It just miraculously came, and it created all these wonderful enzymes and life forms on our planet. This has never been shown in a practical example in a lab, where they put all these enzymes and then they gave it the right conditions and it started creating all the wonderful things in life. Of course, the atheists will say, oh, but it takes 1,000,000 years, so that's why we can't do it. Well, that's the proof right there. You can't prove it, yet you say this is how it happened. And then you say, well, it happened even without the act of God, yet you can't even show that example. So on multiple levels, the atheist gets debunked. None of their assertions can be proven. Allah is the creator, and the argument stands. Thank you for listening.